I saw my new friends, their suits, their ties, through the rain-soaked windshield of the limousine as they walked by my father's casket. Yeah, that was surreal. But let me back up. As a sophomore in high school, in fact, this very high school, Orange High School in Pepper Pike, Ohio, I played an unpopular sport, soccer. I was probably just as unpopular at the time. A few months before my father's death, he recognized this and turned my name into a Jewish youth group called B'nai B'rith Youth Organization. The boys' side was called Aleph Tzaddik Aleph, or AZA. I reluctantly attended that first meeting of David Berger, AZA. The chapter was named in honor of Cleveland, Ohio native and Israeli Olympic weightlifting team member who was killed during the Munich Olympics by terrorists. It was probably, maybe it was Mr. Hastings' class, I actually did pay attention in English, that brought my attention to one of the poems by Robert Frost. The last three lines always resonated with me. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the road less traveled, and that has made all the difference. This is my story of roads less traveled and how I can impact others along the way. But back to that AZA chapter. A few months later, a member approached me and said, "Hey, would you consider a leadership position?" I'm like, "Me?" It never even crossed my mind. But I accepted the challenge and soon found a passion for event programming and the rush that becomes becoming a leader. But I was still somewhat lost at that time, trying to figure out life. An older brother was studying photojournalism, so I thought, wow, a news photographer, that might be kind of cool. I was soon that kid that always had that camera slung over his shoulder. To this day, I have no recollection how I met Andrew. He was a photographer at a local newspaper. I showed him a couple photos I had taken at a dark, cold, almost blurry photos of a car accident. Next thing I know, he had me in front of his editor. He had seen something in those photos, and she did too. And I was offered the very lucrative position as a stringer photographer. How lucrative? I got to stand out at the stadium here for 3 hours on a 20-degree day taking pictures. And my compensation was $5 for the first picture photo published and $2.50 for every one after. But I got free black and white film, access to a dark room, and occasionally my name under the photo on the cover. So that was pretty cool. The newspaper started sending me to community events, rope rescue trainings for fire departments. I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. And a new road was about to open before me. And this time, I was going to be able to influence others as well. I convinced one of my best friends to join Orange Village Fire Department, a volunteer department. They gave us a helmet, a coat, and boots, terrified my mother, and set us off to fire school. Well, by then, we were seniors in this very high school, and at the time, we had to do a senior project. That was studying an occupation of your choice for 4 weeks. And my advisor, she burst my bubble. She said, "I'm not letting you sit at an empty volunteer fire station for 4 weeks, unsupervised. Go over to the city of Pepper Pike, the city that we have to be in, and see if they'll take you." So I did. For 4 weeks, I learned what those guys do. I looked for the basement steps countless times that they asked me to sweep, finding out later there was no basement. But now I've graduated, and those older boys, those new friends, were off at Kent State University. So I asked, "Hey, should I follow you guys there? Should I join Alpha Epsilon Pi like you?" And they said, "Yeah, it's AZA with beer." It didn't take much influence at that point to take my 18-year-old freshman being motivated by beer. But that freshman, like every other freshman at that time, wandering around campus that first week, not really knowing where you're going. And then Sherry, she was some. She crossed my path. She was wearing a blood red button-down long sleeve shirt. 2 patches on each shoulder, and a radio swung over her hip. She was with Kent State Volunteer Ambulance Service. I immediately changed my curriculum and added an emergency medical technician course to my curriculum. Not because of her, really. But I soon found many of my non-class hours volunteering at Kent State Ambulance. We did occasionally take the ambulance to class with us. It was a great way to fake a call and get out of a class if it was really boring. We didn't do that too often. A couple volunteers from the same ambulance service came in one day and said, hey, we're going to go off to St. Thomas in Akron. It's a hospital, and they're going to teach us how to be advanced EMTs. I'm like, advanced EMTs? What does that get us? Oh, you'll be able to start IVs. Well, what I didn't know is the director of that program would put me on a path, again, that would be uncharted and change my life. She simply said, why don't you guys stay for the full year and do the paramedic class? So there we were, college students during the day, paramedic students at night from maybe 6 to 10 p.m. at night, and then to get our required clinical hours, we'd work in the ER from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. But heck, we were 18, 19 years old and pretty much could live on coffee. Well, let's fast forward. So I graduate, marry love of my life, Cheryl, and we settle in Twinsburg, Ohio. And if you've never heard of Twinsburg, Ohio, it has the largest gathering of twins in the world. And it's in the city charter that if you live there, you have to have twins. No, you don't believe me? So twins are born. I volunteer in a lot of different activities, end up getting on a couple school boards, various business organizations. All along the time, our family got heavily involved in what's called Relay for Life from the American Cancer Society. We did every committee there was. We had tons of team activity, and for 16 years, we were doing this all under the eye of my twins. Then they came to me one day and said, hey, what's going on with Relay? I said, I don't know. All the leaders are burned out. Everybody's chaired. I don't think it's going to happen. And they said, well, we could do it. I immediately said, great idea. And then I immediately said after that, wait, you guys are sophomores in high school. How are you going to do that? They were about to go on the path that they would chart on their own. And they chaired, as youth, the first time forever that was chaired by 4 youth in a 1,000-person community event. And as I said, I got very active in their lives, coaching a lot of sports. I just couldn't see sitting there in a canvas chair looking at my phone while somebody else coached. So I coached them in softball, I coached them in soccer. One evening, kind of an innocuous soccer practice, trying to jam just one more drill in before it's too dark, and we couldn't see the ball or the net anymore. And they were dutifully sitting around listening to my drill, or at least as much listening as a co-ed recreational soccer team would do. And then it happened. My hand shook. Just for a second. Did anybody even see that? And it felt weird. But it wouldn't happen again for 3 months. So like most humans, you just kind of blow it off. Well, that was weird. But then it became more frequent. I mentioned something to a chiropractor, and she said, go see your primary. I mentioned my primary is like, everybody's got tremors. If you're that worried, go see this guy. So we had me go see this neurologist at a hospital, and I got to tell you, this guy was arrogant and smug. He had me recite the months backwards, like, what does that mean? And he goes, here, literally threw these pills at me and said, take this. This will tell us. Tell us what? He didn't tell me. He just sent me out there. So like a good patient, I dutifully took 2 of the 3 pills, and I'm telling you, I felt whacked, anxious, out of body. I'm like, I can't take this. I call my primary. He says, well, if you're not having symptoms, why are you taking the medicine? I'm like, good talk, good talk. An entire year would go by. I was having lunch with a friend, and when they say, hey, can I ask you a personal question? It's never good. She goes, do you have Parkinson's? I go, yeah, I think I do. I'm a paramedic. I knew something was wrong. I knew it was neurological. But she said, hey, my husband sees so-and-so, and he's had a neurology at this other system. Now, I went into this meeting thinking, well, I'm going to see my kids graduate high school. Am I in a wheelchair in 2 months, 2 years? Who knows? And he said, wait, hold on. Hold the phone. He goes, yes, it's Parkinson's. Yes, it's curable. Yes, it's progressive. But you're young. You have what's called young onset. I only have a tremor on the one side. He said, you may progress as little as 1% a year. I actually left that appointment and that diagnosis actually feeling better. But the next was the detour. See, I didn't know how people would react. How would the guys at the fire station look at me? What about my business? So the biggest mistake that I learned was hiding it and the stress that I put on my wife and my kids by telling them not to say anything. And then it happened. What I'm calling like the six-lane highway opened up for me. And a completely new road was about to be discovered. I went to a support group with my wife. There was a doctor there, Dr. Karen Jaffe. She happened to be one of my wife's doctors. And she looked across the table and said, which one? I go, it's me. I'm the one with PD, short for Parkinson's disease. Well, Karen goes on to tell us about In Motion, a Parkinson's wellness center that she had founded. Now, this place is absolutely amazing. It has everything from support groups to exercise, boxing, spinning, CrossFit, you name it. You could do it there. And what's even more amazing, this center in Beechwood, Ohio is 100% free for patients and their caregivers. It's completely supported by fundraising. I got active, very active in boxing, and I actually became the first what they call client coach, because they have outside coaches, and asking me to help with boxing. And I would take the brand new, wide-eyed, newly diagnosed clients, sometimes 20 years my age, and say, welcome to the club that you didn't want to be in. Now let's get to work. It was at one of my first fundraising events, a 5K run, well, walk for me. I wasn't running yet. That they said, hey, we have a very special guest speaker opening ceremonies. His name is Jimmy Choi. I'm like, Jimmy Choi, who's that? So I looked him up, not knowing that he would soon be one of my heroes. See, Jimmy Choi was 27 when he was first diagnosed with Parkinson's. Like me, he too hit it. Gained a bunch of weight, started walking with a cane at that age. And then his pivotal moment, he fell down the stairs carrying his infant son. Fortunately, neither were hurt. But he said something's got to change. That change became a couple laps around the block. Those walks around the block became 5Ks. 5Ks became marathons. And he was sitting one evening with his daughter watching a show called American Ninja Warrior. And on comes a competitor with Parkinson's. His daughter, she was probably 6, 8 at the time, turns to him and says, what's your excuse? Well, the rest was history. Jimmy got on the show, became an instant celebrity. He has actually competed 6 times, all under the banner of Fox Ninja, raising tons of money and especially awareness for Parkinson's. One of my fellow boxers says, yeah, I know Jimmy. We went to Chicago for his 5K race. Well, I was running by then. So he said, hey, let's do it. So one of my daughters, this boxer, his wife, decided, yeah, let's drive a couple 100 miles to run 3 miles. Jimmy had his ninja buddies there. They had all kinds of obstacles set up. And our team, the Ohio Parkinson's Warriors, was actually able to raise enough money to be invited to his private dinner that night with the Michael J. Fox people. Talking with Jimmy, my daughter says, hey, my dad got up your warp wall. And if you've ever seen the show, there's a warp wall. Now, this probably was nowhere near as high as the one on set at the show, but I did get up this 10 or 12-foot wall by myself with the coaching of Kyle, the deaf ninja. Got up there, never thought about it, but my daughter mentions it to Jimmy, and he said, oh, well, you got up the warp wall. You got to come out next month. We're doing a Spartan. Well, I don't know what the hell a Spartan was, but I know if Jimmy Choi's doing it, I am nowhere in any shape to do it. And I declined. A Spartan are terrain obstacle races of various lengths, and I was nowhere near ready to do that. But that idea stuck in my head. But a little thing called the pandemic got in the way. But winter of 2022, that idea was still in my head. And another much muddier path was about to open. I mentioned to one of the emotion coaches. Now, we have some of the most amazing coaches. Some of them are here right now, so I'm trying not to get emotional. They just know how to motivate someone with Parkinson's. And I said, hey, have you ever heard of a Spartan? He goes, well, I've done a Tough Mudder. I think I know what a Spartan is. I said, well, I'm thinking of competing. Would you coach me? True emotion coach fashion, he says, well, you put it out in the universe, we have to do it. So we started training. Pretty soon, we found ourselves on Father's Day 2022. Probably more terrified than getting up on this stage because we just had no idea what was ahead of us. We had seen the videos, we had seen people fall, and we did just not know if we were ready. But here we go. We climbed over the first wall, about a 4-foot wall, just to get into the starting gate. To get the pump-up speech, you have to get over a wall. And when I say we, this was a time where I learned not only can I impact my life, but those of others. See, there was 8 others that decided to go along with this. We'd be running in the woods, through the mud, over obstacles, carrying 60-pound sandbags, and I'd say, I don't know what's crazier, us doing this, or you 8 following me with this. But we did it. We climbed the ropes, we got over the obstacles, we went under the water, we got up to 30, 35-foot cargo nets. My daughters joined me in this. They were part of the 8, and they got out of their comfort zone just as much as the rest of us. But in the end, we jumped over the fire. It's what you do. And we were Spartans. We collected our medals, and knowing that they couldn't take that away from us. That was truly an amazing day. And I knew that that was a path that I never thought was possible. When Jimmy mentioned, come out to a Spartan, I'd love to go do a Spartan with him now. I still don't think I can keep up. How can you impact those around you and discover the past? My story is a bunch of paths that opened up for me, untraveled roads, just like Robert Frost's poem. And as you know, there's no secrets at a fire station. In fact, 2 years before I was diagnosed, I was on the computer and one of the guys said, hey, do you have Parkinson's? I'm like, what are you talking about? I just blamed it on a workout and too much coffee. But when I finally did come out and tell them, in true fire department fashion, one of the officers said, so can I catch this from you making breakfast? Yes, they were joking. But I stand before you today, a marketing executive that fights fires literally and Parkinson's daily. Oh, and I'm still at that senior project. I'm coming on 40 years. I'm a lieutenant at Pepper Pike Fire. But still, they haven't kicked me out yet. What paths can you discover and can you impact others? Thank you.